from HoopSisters, and in this video I'm going to show you how to do a generic applique border block for the Jacobean Journey quilt. This one will cover all the applique blocks with the exception of A5H6 and A6H5 and the corner blocks. Those blocks will have a separate video. This one will be for just the generic applique border blocks for Jacobean Journey. So let's take a look and see what we need to make it. The fabric and thread that you'll need for just one of the generic applique border blocks is, first of all, you'll need your fabric 1, and I've chosen this color. We'll also need fabric 2, and this will be our optional piping for the version A. If you're doing version B, which is the decorative stitching in place of the piping, then you will not need that. Also, I need fabric 3, which is going to be for the applique portion of this block. And then I also need my fabric 4, which is this very dark charcoal gray. And then for threads, I will need thread A, which is going to contrast my limey color here. And I've chosen this meadow green. I also need a matching bobbin. I also need a matching thread for my thread 2, which is my piping. There's those. And I'll need a thread C that matches my purple. I happen to choose a very pretty variegated. And also I'll need thread D, which will match my charcoal gray. You'll also need water-soluble thread and an embroidery bobbin thread. And it's also going to be very helpful to have some Wonder Tape, some double-sided sticky tape, and also some sort of water-soluble spray. And I guess it's time to get started on our block. I'm excited to see what this one will look like. For step number 1, you're going to have your battleizer in the hoop, and you're going to place neutral embroidery thread in the needle and embroidery bobbin thread in the bobbin, and you're going to sew the pattern onto the battleizer. For step number 2, you're going to place fabric 1 right side up on the right side of the block, and you're going to sew a basting stitch with water-soluble thread. Then you're going to trim a scant 1/4 inch inside the block and leave approximately 1/2 inch on the outside of the block. For step number 3, if you're doing version A, you're going to continue with water-soluble thread, and you're going to place Wonder Tape on the inside between the 2 basting stitches. What this is going to do is it's going to be able to hold your piping in place. So we're going to put the tape down and then remove the paper backing, and we're going to place our prepared piping, and we're going to make sure that our folded edge goes onto the yellow fabric on the right. If you are going to do a version B, then you're going to place thread B in the needle only, and the machine will sew the decorative stitches. But for the sample that we're doing here, we are going to use the piping. And you can see I'm trying to find the folded edge, and the folded edge will line up with the basting stitch on the inside of the yellow fabric. Then you're going to take it to the machine, and it's going to sew a tack down stitch. For step 4, for both version A and B, you're going to place fabric 4 right side up on the left side of the block, and the machine will sew the tack down stitch using water-soluble thread. Then you're going to trim the outside of the block approximately 1/2 inch away from the basting stitch using the hoop scissors, and on the inside it's really helpful to use the hoop scissors mini, and you will trim that side of the block right up to the stitching as you would for machine applique. For step 5, you're going to put thread D in the needle only and sew the satin stitches. For step 6, place thread A in the needle only and sew the decorative stitch. For thread 7, place water-soluble thread in the needle only and sew the placement stitch. For step 8, place fabric 3 right side up over the placement stitch and sew the tack down. Trim close to the stitching using the Hoop Scissors Mini. For step 9, place thread D in the needle only and sew the embroidery. For step 10, place thread A in the needle only and sew the satin stitches. For step 11, place thread B in the needle only and sew the embroidery. For step 12, place water-soluble thread in the needle only and spray the wrong side of your backing fabric with temporary spray adhesive and adhere the backing fabric to the back of the hoop. Then sew the basting stitches. For step 13, place thread B in the needle and bobbin and sew the decorative stitches. Now that our backing fabric is on the back of our hoop, you need to take your bobbin thread and bring it to the top before you begin sewing. You also need to make sure that your automatic thread cutter is turned off. By doing these two steps, it makes for a much nicer, cleaner looking back. For step 14, place thread A in the needle and bobbin. Stitch the quilting designed and digitized by Sharon Schomburg. For step 15, you're going to place thread C in the needle and the bobbin and stitch the quilting, also designed by Sharon. Well, here is the back of our completed block, and here is the front. And talk just a little bit about trimming. This is our trimmer by George. If this side of your block is going to have binding attached to it, then what you will do is you will trim it through all the layers 1/4 of an inch from the basting stitch. If, however, this is going to have a border block joined to it or any other block joined to it, you will use the metal edge of the trimmer by George, placing it between the battleizer and the fabric on the front, lay it flat, and then use a rotary cutter to trim the batting and the backing fabric away. And then after that, you can trim that edge 1/4 of an inch from the basting stitch. I hope you'd enjoyed the video.